I started to see more and more responses to a Patti LuPone profile interview in The New Yorker in which she made some controversial statements, which is not news in and of itself because controversy and drama has followed Patti LuPone throughout her decades-long career. A career that has spanned the stage and screen, multiple Tony Award wins, iconic performances, playing herself in various cameos. She has become, as Patti LuPone, the persona just as iconic as any of the roles that she's created on stage, which include but are not limited to Broadway's original Eva Perón, the world's original Fantine in Les Miserables.
Patti LuPone is a great example of why you need to stop being so mean to people, especially if you're trying to have a long-lasting career.
It's okay to have a bold, audacious, confrontational diva personality where you're willing to speak your mind. It is not okay to use that personality as a justification for microaggressions, racism, bullying, and just being mean-spirited and mean.
Patti LuPone is what happens when an insecure little girl gets everything that she wants.
Shut up, Patti LuPone! Shut your brassy, magnificent trap!
As well as celebrated performances of Joanne and Company, Rose in Gypsy, Reno Sweeney in Anything Goes, and more. But even before she was fired from the role of Norma Desmond in the North American transfer of Sunset Boulevard, another role which she created for the stage in the original London production and subsequently, won a lot of money.
We have an update to the Patti LuPone situation as Patti has actually released a statement. Now, I will not read the full statement verbatim, although you can pause to read if you would like, but she acknowledges that in the past she has just kind of said whatever she wants and never apologizes.
In a lawsuit and named a swimming pool for Angela Weber and did batting practice in the dressing room. Even before that, there has been an air of constant drama around Patti LuPone, a lot of which has made her beloved, especially within a particular subsection of musical theatre fan. Yes, gay men, I'm talking about us.
Which of the actresses that beat you deserved their win the least?
That's 2. That's 3.
It would be Joanna Gleason in Into the Woods.
I should have won for Anything Fucking Goes. Okay.
But there comes a point when something is said and you really have to take a step back and consider whether the shade throwing is just not fun anymore. And though I never thought we'd see the day, here we are with Patti LuPone publicly calling out multi-Tony Award winning Broadway legend Audra McDonald.
And says that this changed today. Specifically apologizing to both Kecia Lewis and Audra McDonald for the disrespect and says that she hopes to have a chance to apologize to both of them personally. Now, I personally would have liked to see her acknowledge a little bit more specifically what she said and why it was a microaggression.
And this is shocking and upsetting because they're both multi-Tony Award-winning Broadway legends. They are both icons of the stage who, prior to this, in years past, have shared the stage in so many different productions.
Patti LuPone didn't expect one quote to blow up her whole Broadway legacy, but that's exactly what happened. One moment she's casually speaking to The New Yorker, the next she's trending with number LuPonegate, called out by over 500 theater professionals, and suddenly forced to apologize for the first time in her 70-year career. Here's how it started. In June 2025, The New Yorker published an in-depth profile on Patti. Nothing new, right? Until one line hit the internet like a storm. Patti was asked about fellow Broadway legend Audra McDonald, who at the time was starring in a revival of Gypsy. Patti, without blinking, said Audra was not a friend and added, "She should know better." That part alone raised eyebrows, but it didn't stop there.
Not often on Broadway, but at the Ravinia Festival, where they did a whole host of Sondheim shows together, and in concert stagings of things, and possibly even in Masterclass, if Audra, I think, was still in the show when Patti LuPone replaced playing Maria Callas.
When asked about actress Kecia Lewis, LuPone went even further. She questioned whether Kecia, an industry veteran currently starring in the Tony-nominated Hell's Kitchen, had even done enough Broadway to call herself a veteran. She also responded to accusations that her earlier comments about Hell's Kitchen being too loud were microaggressive, dismissing them completely. No context, no softening, just raw commentary straight from Patti's mouth. And that was it. That one interview lit the match. Within hours, TikTok creators started clipping the quotes. Threads popped up on Reddit. Fans, and even longtime LuPone defenders, began asking, is this just diva behavior, or something more toxic? This wasn't just a spicy backstage moment. It hit a nerve, because Patti's legacy had always walked the tightrope between bold and brash. And this time, the tone felt different. She wasn't clapping back at a rude fan. She was aiming low at two respected black actresses during one of their career peaks. and the internet noticed.
But certainly, they have worked very closely for a long time, especially in the world of Sondheim. I had no idea that there had been a huge rift in their friendship, but evidently there has been.
But that was just the opening act. What happened next made Broadway history and forced Patti to do something she swore she'd never do. The backlash didn't just come from fans, it came from Patti's peers, the Broadway insiders, the people who usually keep their opinions private, or at least off the record. This time, they weren't holding back. Within just a few days of the New Yorker profile going live, a massive open letter started circulating. And when we say massive, we're talking over 500 signatures from some of the biggest names in the theater world. Directors, performers, playwrights, producers, they all came together with one message: Patti LuPone crossed the line. The letter didn't mince words. It called her comments toward Audra McDonald and Kecia Lewis degrading, misogynistic, and an example of the racialized disrespect that performers of color face in this industry.
And Patti LuPone, as ever, is gonna talk about it. And while we don't know the origins of that particular feud, we do know the context around why Patti is talking about it now.
It accused her of bullying, of using her legendary status to punch down, of showing a pattern, not just a one-time mistake. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about the quotes, it was about the pattern. Patti had always been outspoken. She once famously stopped a show to yell at someone taking photos. She snatched a phone out of a fan's hand during a performance. She made headlines in 2020 for yelling at someone who wouldn't wear a mask. These moments went viral and were often defended as classic Patti. But when those same antics get aimed at fellow artists, especially women of color, it hits different. The open letter became a full-blown movement. TikTok creators started tagging videos with number LuPone Gate. Broadway gossip pages turned into front-page news. Even performers who once called Patti an icon started quietly unfollowing her. This wasn't just backlash.
So in a particularly unhinged theatre news recap from me, let's scan through this New Yorker article. Let me tell you what I think about all of this, and let's all take a moment together to really take in this new divided Broadway battleground on which we find ourselves.
It was a reckoning, and just when everyone thought Patti would double down, do what divas do best, and dig in her heels, she surprised everyone. If there's one thing Broadway fans thought they'd never see, it was Patti LuPone apologizing. For anything. But after the open letter exploded, and her name kept trending for all the wrong reasons, she did what shocked even her critics. She issued a public apology. And not just any statement. Patti posted a full-on written note to Instagram, starting with the words, "For as long as I have worked in the theater, I have spoken my mind and never apologized. That is changing today." Just that opening line set the internet on fire. In the statement, she admitted her comments in The New Yorker were demeaning and disrespectful. She said she was devastated that her behavior had hurt others and gone against the values of the theater community. She added, "I take full responsibility for it, and I am committed to making this right." She even said she hoped to speak directly with Audra and Kecia to offer a personal apology. Now,
it's a profile on Patti LuPone, leading with the headline, "Patti LuPone is done with Broadway and almost everything else." Right beneath that, it says the 76-year-old theatre diva, a word that I'm not sure she cares for necessarily, famed and feared for her salty bravado, dishes on Hal Prince.
This is where the story really split the audience. Some fans praised her for taking accountability, for not hiding behind PR reps or deleting comments. They said it showed growth, maturity, maybe even regret. But others weren't buying it. They pointed to that first line, "I've never apologized," as a red flag. Critics said it sounded more like a flex than remorse, that it wasn't humility. It was a mic drop, trying to win points for doing the bare minimum. TikTok was torn. A wave of creators broke down every sentence. Instagram polls showed more than 60% of fans believed the apology was more about damage control than genuine regret. Still, it was historic, because Patti LuPone had never done this before. Not for the phone snatching, not for yelling at fans, not even during past controversies. But now, with the Tonys around the corner and her reputation on the line, she blinked. And that silence on Broadway's biggest night said even more. For someone who built her entire brand on commanding the stage, Patti LuPone's absence at the 2025 Tony Awards was deafening. No red carpet, no backstage sightings, no surprise appearance, just silence. And make no mistake, people noticed. Broadway's biggest night turned into a referendum on the controversy. Entertainment outlets like Playbill and Vanity Fair were practically live blogging the tension.
Poorly behaved audience members, including but not limited to the woman who was texting on her phone during Patti's off-Broadway appearance in a play, as well as the woman at the company talkback who claimed that she paid her salary.
TikTok creators were zooming in on empty seats in the audience, speculating whether one of them belonged to Patti. And while she wasn't there, her name still dominated the night. See, this year's Tonys had a major showdown for Best Leading Actress in a Musical. On one side, Audra McDonald, who was playing Mama Rose in a new revival of Gypsy, a role that basically became synonymous with Patti LuPone back in the day. On the other, Nicole Scherzinger, whose West End performance in Sunset Boulevard had been gaining momentum for months. When Nicole won, the reactions were immediate. Some fans were thrilled, others were shocked, but plenty of Broadway insiders were asking, did all this drama actually help Nicole's chances? Because let's be honest, when over 500 artists publicly defend Audra and Patti LuPone ends up the villain of Tony Week, that kind of energy doesn't go unnoticed. And when Nicole took the stage, the subtext was loud: Audra may be Broadway royalty, but the crown is never guaranteed. And here's what made it even messier. Patti never said a word. No congrats, no shade, nothing. She didn't show. She didn't speak. And for someone known to belt her opinions louder than most singers can project, her silence felt calculated. Or maybe it wasn't silence at all. Maybe it was strategy. Because just as the spotlight shifted toward her critics, TikTok was heating up all over again. And now, Broadway's last true diva was trending for something she couldn't control. If Broadway was the first act, TikTok was the encore, and it was wild. The LuPone Gate didn't just trend, it took over.
Patti LuPone, a magnet for Broadway's Karens since the 1970s. As Michael Schulman goes on to talk about her screen work and her having joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a witch in Agatha all along, he notes a quote from Aubrey Plaza, who also appeared alongside her in that TV show and lived with Patti LuPone when she was doing an off-Broadway play.
In the week after the New Yorker profile dropped, the hashtag racked up over 40 million views. And it wasn't just Broadway fans talking. It was Gen Z theater kids, celebrity gossip channels, culture critics, even people who didn't know who Patti LuPone was before this mess. Why did it catch fire so fast? Because TikTok thrives on contradictions, and Patti LuPone was suddenly the perfect storm. A legendary performer with a history of bold moments, who finally said something the internet couldn't excuse. Creators stitched old clips, like Patti grabbing someone's phone mid-show or yelling about flash photography, and paired them with her "I've never apologized" quote. Others contrasted her behavior with Audra McDonald's quiet grace, or Kecia Lewis's powerful call-out. Some even reenacted the New Yorker interview word for word, complete with fake sunglasses and drama queen music. It became a digital stage show, and Patti wasn't the director anymore. What made it hit even harder? The fact that people weren't just laughing, they were analyzing. TikTok users started pulling receipts on Broadway's history of gatekeeping.
Aubrey Plaza said, and I quote, "She doesn't give a shit about what anyone thinks." That again will be relevant as we move through this article. So the next thing that happens is LuPone is being driven up 8th Avenue, and as it goes past the theatre district, she explains why she is, at least for now, note that, done with Broadway. And
they asked why LuPone got second, third, fourth chances, while artists of color had to fight for one. They questioned the whole diva pass culture that lets certain icons say whatever they wanted without consequences. Suddenly, Number LuPone Gate wasn't just about Patti. It was about the system that let her thrive. And while fans were divided on whether the apology was real or rehearsed, one thing was clear: the internet wasn't waiting for Patti to change. It had already moved on, rewriting her legacy in real time. But what happens when Broadway's biggest personality gets outshined by the very people she once dismissed? Stay with me, because that legacy might already be slipping. For decades, Patti LuPone was Broadway's North Star. Big voice, big presence, bigger opinions. She wasn't just a performer, she was a force. The kind of person who could turn a sound check into a showdown and make it iconic. But after LuPone Gate, people started asking something no one dared to before. Is it time for Patti to exit stage left? Because here's the truth: Broadway is changing. Fast. Theaters that once protected temperamental genius behavior are being forced to reevaluate what that even means.
You'll remember from a few moments ago she said that before and then worked at the booth. She said, "I'm so angry at whoever choked the stem right in the middle by making Times Square a pedestrian mall." And apparently when she was starring in Company, she would carry a bullhorn and yell at pedestrians from her car window. What is her issue with this and all the traffic of Times Square, you may be wondering? Well, it's a logistical one.
Gen Z fans don't just want talent, they want accountability. And with stars like Audra McDonald setting the new gold standard for grace, representation, and raw power, the old-school diva excuse just doesn't fly anymore. Even LuPone's past behavior is being re-examined, like her dramatic announcement in 2022 that she was quitting Equity, the actors' union, only to return for a major play in 2024. She claimed she was done with the circus, but her comeback raised eyebrows. Did she really leave? Did she quietly rejoin? Or did the rules just not apply? To some, it looked like privilege in plain sight. And let's not forget, this all went down while Kecia Lewis was having a major career renaissance and Audra was making Tony history with her Gypsy revival. So when Patti took shots at both of them, two Black women in defining moments of their careers, it didn't feel like diva drama. It felt personal, it felt targeted, and it felt outdated. Sure, there will always be people who defend her, who say this is Broadway and thick skin is part of the job, but more and more, people are realizing that sharp wit and disrespect aren't the same thing. And when Patti finally apologized, it felt less like a powerful woman standing her ground, and more like someone realizing the spotlight doesn't follow her the way it used to. Because now, Broadway's brightest lights, they're pointing in a different direction. So let's break it down. One quote in The New Yorker turned into a wildfire. Patti LuPone dismissed Audra McDonald and Kecia Lewis. The theater world clapped back with a 500-signature letter.
She says, "It's impossible for us to get to work, and I said that years ago, so I start work angry. I can't get to my theater because of the traffic pattern, because of the arrogance of the people in the streets. It's a road. Get out of the street." And I can understand from my handful of visits.
Patti posted her first ever apology. She skipped the Tonys. And by then, Number LuPone had already become a digital movement bigger than any one performance. It wasn't just about hurt feelings. It was about what happens when a legacy built on being brutally honest collides with a generation that's done making excuses for that kind of behavior. Because while Patti LuPone might still have the vocal cords of a Broadway legend, her power, that untouchable, untamed diva energy, it might not work in 2025 the way it did in 1985. Audra's grace, Kecia's strength, the internet's refusal to stay silent. They're not the side story anymore. They are the story. And maybe that's the most dramatic twist of all. A diva known for commanding the stage accidentally gave it to someone else. But here's the real plot twist. Patti did apologize. Whether it was heartfelt or strategic, she did something no one expected. And maybe that's worth watching too, because Broadway isn't just about big voices, it's about change too. And this was a showstopper. From LuPone to legacy shakeups, Broadway's drama isn't just on stage anymore. If you loved the tea and want more behind-the-curtain breakdowns, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because trust me, this curtain call was just the beginning